Geriatric care, confusing emergency room full of noises. Gina, they are talking about me. You need to go over there. Delusions, paranoia, and confusion, exacerbated by a hospital stay due to pneumonia. On top of Parkinson's disease, dementia is so misunderstood in an emergency room. My dad, I wrote that a year ago. My dad was in the hospital for dementia, and I met my mom at the emergency room. And for some reason, this emergency room has what they call split rooms. So there's a physical wall, but then there's a space with like a shared door that goes across both of them. So more than once, they put my dad into one of these rooms. Every other time I've been to the emergency room for other experiences in our area of Charlotte, you're in a separate room and there's walls and there's a door. Um, so you're separate, you're isolated. And yet here's my dad, who's got advanced dementia and Parkinson's, and he's dealing with pneumonia. And so his alertness and all these things are affected. He went via ambulance, laying on his back after one of the times he passed out. I'm trying to remember the different situations. So they wheel you in, right? You're wheeled in from the emergency room off the ambulance, facing the ceiling into this room, and then you can't see what's going on around you. He's got vision problems to begin with. And I walk in, and my mom's telling me he's upset, he's excited, he's anxious about things. And I'm noticing that the doctor or someone is next door with another patient, and they're having a conversation over there. And my dad's hearing this because his hearing is somehow tuned in more so than his other senses. And he's like, they're talking, you need to be over there, you need to know what's going on. And he is desperately trying to make sense of his surroundings. And that is something that has been almost all of the time with my dad and his dementia. And, there's a huge difference with Parkinson's dementia and other dementias. And with my dad being so logically minded, so engineering based, he's always trying to figure things out. And, imagine having dementia, being confused, your brain's not functioning properly, and you're trying to figure things out. That's how behavior problems happen in the geriatric population. And so he's trying to figure this out. He's trying to make sense. He's hearing all these sounds. He's, who knows what they were talking about, if, that he was taking it in and internalizing it, and he was anxious. Who wouldn't be? So I'm there to help him calm down, and I'm taking all this in. I'm tuning in. I'm kind of in a comfortable place when I'm in a hospital or situation with my dad, just because I've worked in healthcare for so long that I kind of understand some of the underworkings, even though I haven't specifically worked in a hospital, which maybe gives me a little bit of that outside perspective of looking around at my environment. And as an OT, that's my job, is to notice the environment, how it affects people, to notice how people are functioning in their surroundings. And so here I am looking at this place going, these people, this is a busy hospital in a busy city. They're doing their job by effectively running in, running out. They have a lot going on. I think the one time before I got there, there had been police there, and there was just all this commotion because it was, who knows what that situation was about, but about that they needed police in the building. So my dad hears all this. He thinks he got in trouble and he did something illegal. And so just all this commotion going on. And so these healthcare workers, these doctors, these nurses, all these people are really trying to do their job. And in that setting, when it's that intense, they're having to just literally jump in. Okay, I'm going to get the blood work and jump out. And a lot of times they're not um, introducing themselves, or they're doing so in such a quick way that it can leave anyone with slight hearing issues or slight confusion, fatigue, to miss that. And it can be very unsettling. And so I'm observing this. I'm seeing my mom. She's exhausted just from being a caregiver, even though she's fully cognitively intact for an 80-year-old. And I'm observing all these things going on. And I'm going, wow, this environment is terrible for anyone who's older. And so many older people, talking 65 plus geriatric population, going to the hospital. So many people. I saw this older man just out in the hallway because they didn't have a room for him. And I just wanted to go over and hold his hand. I'm like, what? How awful. He's there alone, you know, and just in the hallway, and there's all this commotion going on about you. And I'm like, what a terrible setting for someone who's, you know, already dealing with other issues. And just any kind of confusion can be exaggerated. So just realizing that this is not set up well for the geriatric population, and in particular, people with dementia. I could say the same about children too. It's just not set up. And so I'm helping my mom interpret what's going on, and being sure to ask the questions and paying attention to who's coming in to speak. And just as simple as, was that the doctor, or was that the nurse, or was that someone from intake? Um, these people don't introduce themselves. The best communication we had was the transport person, who I guess had more time on his hands, so to speak, that he made a human connection and interacted and told us what his name was and had the time to just, it was even just a couple minutes. It wasn't very long, but it just, that connection is so missing in these settings. And I wanted right there and then to just revamp the system and start writing how this could be different and more effective for people.
So, hello, this is Don
And this is Gina.
with Focus Healthy Family. And this is podcast number 114, 114.
And today we're talking about digging to the roots of communication. But we'll pause before we go into that. And today we're talking about Ask the OT. This is a new program that we're starting where you're going to be able to connect via online, via phone call, Zoom, and ask questions about dealing with elderly parents or loved ones and navigating that journey and incorporating different components, dealing what if your parent has dementia, and how are you supposed to get them to listen to you and follow through, and you got to get them out of their house, but they're resistant and yet they can't follow what you're saying and understand. Or maybe you're wondering, does my dad have dementia? Why is he doing these funny things? What's going on? So we're building a community of support. My years of experience as an occupational therapist working primarily in adult and geriatric rehab, and my background also with my family and helping my father navigate the journey of Parkinson's disease for the past 17 years and seeing his decline and his issues with dementia, and all the families I've worked with over the years in working with this population. I want to help other people with this, all this information and experience that I've accumulated. And I know how disconnecting it to be. You're juggling multiple things at once. You're going to work, you're taking your kids to high school activities, and now you're helping your parents navigate it. Maybe it's a long distance thing. So come join us in our community.
Yeah, Gina will be doing her first live kind of Q&A talk on April 2nd, 7 p.m. You can find out more about it by going to our website, focusedhealthyfamily.com. And actually, we have a little logo up there about Ask the OT, whether you can click on that and you'll find out more information about how to get involved with this community that we're building. So check us out, and we look forward to you being there asking your questions. Starting April 2nd, but it's good to join now and get involved with the community. There's a lot of resources up there for you to be able to pull, and we look forward to talking with you.
Yes, feel free to send us questions you have now.
And I think we're back. We're talking about, well, I think the focus is kind of grounding.
Digging to the roots of communication. So I came up with this topic and these words, and Don's like pulling together because I did this just today and didn't give him time to kind of prep himself. So I ask your forgiveness, Don, as we delve into this, and we'll see.
Toma espantar Espíritu Santos. That's forgiving.
Um, Hopefully, no one finds offense in that.
Sorry, it's an
Um,
old Catholic thing. Um,
and so I will try to do my best to stay focused. And so I shared this story. I had written a blog a year ago based on this experience, and I kind of added more to it with not only my dad, but my child who was dealing with health issues, and just kind of my reflection on that, and just that whole idea of, I can still hear him, Gina, they're talking about us. You need to get over there. Just his urgency and intensity of wanting to figure it out, and yet he's confused, and yet he thinks he did something wrong. And we label him delusional, and yet, well, he hears police noises. I mean, this whole thing started, I think, because of behavior issues. I mean, my dad, when he gets sick, he'd have behavior issues. He would go outside, he'd try to run away, he'd say, they're trying to hurt me. And so he's like hearing this going, okay, I did something wrong and I'm sorry. And please let me go home again. I apologize. So it's like, and it's understandable. It's like, yeah, there's some delusional part, but there's also grounded in some real things that are going on in his environment that he is taking in. And we're not realizing the power that those things are having on his ability to function and his ability to remain calm in the situation. Working in geriatrics for so long and seeing behavior issues in people with dementia, and even sometimes just people going through surgery, things that can cause confusion, infections, all these different things can contribute to confusion. The cat is biting at my cord here. Um, and that you can often step back and say, what led up to the behavior? What was going on? There was a trigger somewhere, you know. I mean, things can kind of happen maybe out of nowhere, but you can go back far enough, there's something that led to it. And so we need to pay attention to these things and it, I got thinking about this whole topic before I even thought about this story, because I realized how important it is for us to be grounded when we're communicating with people.
Well, so step in here with the I while you were telling your story, I got a few moments to go into about grounding because I've believed in it for a long time. I've worked with it with my clients, I did just a little research because I remember it's about ions, about negative and positive ions and I always got confused whether which was putting out which, and I was reading about it, and the Earth has a lot of negative ions, and the problem that happens for us, we tend to get overcharged with positive ions by all the things like, well, just what you were talking about, all the things around, like where your dad was at the emergency room, the electronic equipment there that's being
The overstimulation,
overstimulation, the cell phones put out, all of that. And so literally grounding yourself by going out and putting your feet into the earth or doing it with a cat, um,
is grounding into my skin.
the earth helps to balance that out and bring down the positive and kind of balance out um, and I just thought that like I said, I had learned that a long time ago. I think it was Dr. Kilbane actually that talked to me about grounding the first time, and um, so I've used it with patients, so it kind of goes into because it didn't help your dad in being able to communicate with them because he was overcharged
Well,
with all
and
this,
and there was no source of grounding
yeah.
for him. I mean, he's literally up on what I call a table. It's the ER beds, which are basically stretchers. So literally physically grounded. But also he's in a strange environment.
Mhm.
He's left where he was. His vision is already impaired and he's laying down facing the ceiling. I mean, just that alone. If you can envision yourself being taken in an ambulance, you're in this position and you're wheeled out, bumpity, bumpity, bumpity into a hospital. So you don't really see very well, especially if you have limited peripheral vision and you're maybe not even fully alert, and then coming into this room and you're hearing, taking in all this stuff that's going on around you. And because you're still and you're stuck, our hearing gets amped up when we can't use other senses. And just trying to imagine that for us, healthy young people who don't have extra challenges. And it feels overwhelming when I think about it. And so just that ability to ground. I'm pulling my thoughts back together because I was going to tie in. So we talk about grounding. We talk, I learned it when I learned Reiki. I did Reiki training and, standing on the earth and connecting with it. And you can do exercises where you're literally feeling yourself connect with the roots that are going down, through your body, thinking about yoga and other meditation and other practices that involve this. And I got thinking about, other things that ground us besides like, I'm going to do grounding now, getting sick. Don was sick recently, and then I came down with, I guess, something similar. And when we're sick, we're really in our body, especially if we stop and give ourselves time to rest and recover. And I know Don did a great job this time. He's like, okay, I tend to just go, 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 go. And he let himself rest for a whole day.
That was tough.
And yet, it was a grounding. When we get sick, it's like our body saying, pay attention right now. And so, because we're dealing with congestion and coughs and other things, I mean, it's sort of a grounding into our body that we're having to tune into our body, take care of it, and pay attention to what's going on. Um,
I don't know if you have on, I didn't see on the, but music is very grounding too, I think.
yeah, it can be, and
It can be. I
it
mean,
can also,
it can be a stimulator though at the same
well, it
time,
can
but
also let us help us escape and, kind of take us away from the problems of right here and now. So, like, you're sick, you're right here, you have to deal with it in some way or shape or form, or it it's grounding. Being in a situation with a difficult conversation and having to um, express concerns and feelings. We were recently on a virtual call with one of our kids, a student program, and people were speaking up and sharing concerns. There was lots of change happening in the organization, and they were trying to process things. And so I'm hearing things coming in, and I'm having to try to speak and share myself. And in that process of dealing with that, and then coming out of it and reaching out to people, it was grounding. I was in the situation. I was like, okay, this is what's been going on. I'm having to deal with this, thinking through it all. In a sense, if that makes sense, it was a grounding. Do you help Don ask the questions to help me clarify? Because in my head, it makes perfect sense, but I realize,
um, I'm trying to. Well, I mean, one, you're on an electronic basis on this on so that itself can be,
on
eh,
an electronic. Oh, you mean on
like
the call? Well,
on the call,
I
but
mean the experience of, because it could be in person, the experience of being in a difficult decision, having to make decisions. It's like every time one of my family members went in the hospital, it's sort of like got to deal with right here and now. And that experience in itself is grounding. It forces you to think about what matters most and deal with the situation. And so for this, it wasn't that urgent, like, Don's being rushed to the hospital. I've got to just take care of what matters. I got to, simplify. You just focus, laser focus on what you really have to do and let the other stuff go. So this was you're in a difficult situation. You're dealing with multiple people and having conversations and having to flush things out. You have to be right there in the moment and you got your emotions that are coming up. And so just being in the experience, I guess, and being part of it can ground you. It doesn't necessarily, but for me, because I processed afterwards, I did some journaling afterwards, I did some thorough thinking through it, that whole process, I found grounding because, like, I think about if I'd been in a situation where I wanted to speak up and I didn't many times in my life, I came away frustrated and thinking about what I wish I had said and I could have said, versus even if I speak up and even if it doesn't come out the best way, I've participated. And because of that, it's bringing me back to, okay, I said this and I heard someone say this, and I like how they communicated better. So I'm just that whole process of going through it and the reflection afterwards was grounding for me.
yeah, I guess
Am I
I'm
a little
sorry. I
too
just
philosophical in this
no,
idea?
it just I'm having a hard time kind of realizing that or seeing that. I don't know that I see it for myself.
I guess
So I'm just,
I'm trying to put it
is it
into a
okay to
sip.
be the counterpoint on this, or not necessarily counterpoint, but
Well,
just that
no,
I'm not sure. if it's resonating with me, if I
That's
really
that's
understand it.
okay.
So
And I guess I'm trying to simplify it in that having to go through a difficult situation, getting through it, and taking the time to process what happened and, going within with it can be grounding. Just going through an experience and not just going through it, but then the
the
after
process.
process of it and coming to like decisions afterwards, just kind of that
I
whole,
because then I would say it would be the process that would be the grounding part of it in my thoughts anyway.
yeah, just
Versus
the
because in the online on the program when you're on the program in the program whatever how in the meeting
in the meeting.
online you're getting a lot of energy of
Right.
the energy of a lot of people. It's like being bombarded with positive
Right.
ions, kind of
So
in
it's
a way
more
through.
about, and in some ways it's because I spoke up that sort of helped ground
Yeah,
me because I participated.
it's like you touched
It helped set
or
some
grab
roots
metal. If in a real like a well, they in the article I was reading, they talked about it's almost the example of they ground a gas tank so that it won't explode because over too many ions, too much energy to that could cause an explosion. Well, you're putting that out there was kind of like grabbing and holding a piece of metal to ground yourself in a way. I don't know if the kind of an
Yeah, that
analogy,
I'm thinking of another story that would have been perfect for this. When the lightning strike happened on the lake when my parents lived there, and we think what happened because the furnace in their basement started on fire was that it traveled through a gas line, that the gas they didn't have the heat on. It was summer, but
so there
but
wasn't
it
gas there.
traveled through it and they had to cut the switch off, but they didn't have the switch off. So
Um,
um that was quite an experience. We'll tell that story some other time. Yeah, and so there's several components and there's several layers here of what we're talking about. And I'm I'm just thinking about, we talk about grounding in a spiritual sense, in a, mind body kind of sense. And I'm realizing there are other ways, we ground, when we get sick. I guess it's an opportunity to really tune in and ground. And maybe we don't always take it. Like, okay, you know what? I'm sick. I'm gonna stop working. I'm gonna take time to take care of me. And so
kind
maybe
of
it's
tune in.
it's maybe the opportunity to reground, because your body is screaming out. Over the years, I've gotten sick and I began to realize that it was my mental health that was suffering. And when I was struggling, I would literally manifest physical illness that would force me to slow down and to stop and take care of myself. And eventually, over my adult life, now that I'm 54, but I mean, more recently than just now, realizing that I have to take those mental health days. I have to stop and be like, okay, I'm getting overwhelmed. I want to take a pause before I get sick with pneumonia, the flu, whatever it is out there. We become depleted, and then our body's more susceptible to things, viruses, and things going on. I did that to take a drink of water and then kept
Push it
talking.
out a little bit. Um,
Um, And so, just being aware of that and I guess being aware of seeing those little opportunities of things that can help to ground and connect us. It's like connecting with people. With COVID, we were all separated and social distancing and, um, you go to the grocery store during that height of that and people weren't talking to each other anymore. And so just thinking about these little ways that we ground ourselves as we connect with people and just how important, those day-to-day kind of experiences are in grounding.
well, to tell the story of the how I used this one client that I had that I used grounding. I've used it with a couple in fact, I've used it with a couple kids before, and kids get a kind of a kick out of it because we have some fun with it and they get out barefoot. A lot of kids like to get out and run around barefoot. Because we used to do that with our kids too, take them out when they were a little anxious or whatever, we take them out. But this one client I had, with my tapping process and the coaching I do, she she would come in and she set it up for like 6 or 7 sessions with me, and she came in the first first four, maybe five sessions we had, um, just wasn't clicking for her. Nothing, I was, like I said, I was glad she had pre-signed up for six, I think it was six sessions, because otherwise she probably would have given up because she'd come in just about every evening when she'd come in for her session, she'd plop down in the chair, she'd kind of cross her arms and look at me, and she goes, "This stuff just isn't working." And so we just continue to work. But I had this kind of, I don't know, premonition or vision or something like that on after, I guess it was about our fourth session, that I should ground this person. And so the next session when she came in, I
Just
already
to
had,
clarify, I should help her to ground, yeah, use grounding techniques
oh,
as opposed to you're grounded.
oh yeah, no, no, not punishing her. Um, so the next session, when she came in, I actually had my shoes off already, and she kind of came in going, "Why are your shoes off?" And I said, "Well, guess what? Yours are going off too, because we're gonna go do something a little different." And she was like, "What do you mean?" She was a little hesitant about it, but she did it. And we went outside, in the office right outside the door, and I had her ground her feet in, and then I do kind of
So were you on concrete? Were you on the grass?
no, we we took our shoes off, she took her shoes off out on the concrete walkway and then stepped out onto the
So
grass
did you
that
have
was
socks on? Did you have,
just bare feet,
so, okay, so you were bare feet
barefoot,
and you stepped and stood in the
stepped and
grass.
stood in the grass, and then I had her kind of just squish her feet into the grass a little bit, not digging real deep in the dirt, but just kind of really get a real feel of the earth and the grass. And then I had her close her eyes, and I said, "Now I want you to imagine," and with her, I believe I used light. I just said, "Imagine the Earth's energy is a bright light, and it slowly fills your toes up, and then it slowly goes up your ankle." I had it go all the way, and just I had her imagine to fill her entire body with it. And as she was doing it, I was having her tap too. And then as she got to the top, I had her throw that energy out and had it. And so I said, now we're going to connect to the universe with it. So we're connecting the universe with the earth through you. You're the conduit,
Conduit.
conduit for it. And it took only like 5 minutes. And I had her doing the tapping as we were doing it. And we finished, we put her shoes back on, we went inside. Now, like I said, every session up to this one, we'd do the tapping and nothing would come out. There was just I couldn't get her to
She wasn't
express
she wasn't releasing. It
letting go anything. The
wasn't allowing
content
the
blocked,
process
very
to work.
blocked. She came in, she sat down, we started tapping, and it was like, wow, all of this stuff started coming out. She finally started to open up and release, and it was a real breakthrough for her. Um, Luckily, we had like I think one or two other sessions after that. So we didn't get as far as we wanted, but we did. The big goal was getting her to open up and start recognizing and becoming aware of what was going on. And that's what it was able to do. I was even amazed at it because I had never seen it quite in that extent,
Yeah,
come out.
dramatic,
Yeah,
someone who's blocking and trying, but not really trying, and feels, yeah, just kind of blocked and stuck. It sounds like she was making an effort, didn't realize how blocked she was. And
yeah,
just that experience of, okay, she thought, what are we doing? But she took, okay, let's do this. And so she grounded with you. So
yeah.
she made an investment in it, I think, to do that, because you can resist and be like, oh,
Oh,
nothing.
yeah. I mean, that could have not worked too because if you just continue to block it, but she wanted to get better. She really wanted to release and get this better. And so I think you're right. She was very open to whatever, trying whatever.
And so these tools, like, the story I love that you're telling, it's really powerful, right? And then, okay, you've been tapping all along with her, you've been working with her before, and now after doing that, and how simple. I mean, how much time did you guys spend outside grounding,
Oh, it was under 10 minutes, you
right?
know.
Just that one little thing, 10 minutes out of our entire day, out of an hour session. And then you came back in and did the same things you had done before with her, right?
Yep.
And wow. Um, the power of that. Yeah. I just wanted to back up. I had a couple different thoughts with as we, talking about these, kind of what sparked it was realizing that how our emotions can affect how we communicate and where we're at in the processing of something. I had the contrasting experience um, of yesterday. There was that whole um, online phone call with the meeting, but earlier in the day, I made two phone calls to a continuous care retirement facility where you find independent assisted living, all the levels, and also to another assisted living that has a memory care to set up appointments for my mom and I to go look at them and check them out. It's something we had talked about, her and I told her I'd reach out, to these companies and do this. And so I finally sat down to do it. And I was able to, I left messages for the people. They called me back. I asked for the right person to speak to, which apparently is marketing. And I was able to speak very calmly, clearly, and concisely, even though this is kind of an emotional issue in thinking about this. I was able to state, what we were looking to do, questions we had, remembered, how much time do we allow for this? Kind of think they helped me think through some other thoughts and ideas, just as far as if my mom is thinking about moving, how important it would be to get my dad settled somewhere first, because for her to try to sell her house with my dad still living in it, with his dementia, how difficult that would be. Um, and just, these different ideas and thinking through all of this. So I came off those phone calls just feeling so empowered, when we're capable of something and we go into it with confidence and that comfortable feeling. And I realize it's, I've worked in this field for so long. It's like when I go into a hospital to help my dad out, there's a bit of confidence there because I understand aspects of the system. And I also knew because I was helping my mom. So I'm a little bit removed from it, right? I'm not as enmeshed into it. Um, and it's been something we've been talking about for years. And then because I've moved further away from them, looking at facilities near me. And so there's been all this time. I've had the time to reflect and process, and there's been many discussions around these topics because for so long I really wanted my dad to be home and have in-home care as long as possible, and just seeing the benefits of that. And there was sort of a tipping point over the past year or so where I realized, okay, maybe this is too much on my mom, and maybe, we need to look at these other ideas. And my mom even, started thinking about it. And so I have the contrast of those conversations and the confidence, and then being on this meeting and wanting to speak up and choosing to do so, and then going, wow, that sounded really emotional. And I could feel the emotion in me. And when I get emotional like that, I'm kind of in this different place. And I can't always see, like I was asking you for feedback, Don, because I can't always see how I'm reacting because there's just so much emotion behind it. There was so much unprocessed stuff that had been building up. Um, and, and then I heard other people speak. I'm like, oh, wow, they said what I wanted to say, but they said it so calmly and clearly and concisely. And so just that process of me reflecting through all of that and seeing that contrast and realizing when we're not dealing with our stuff, when we're, then we can't effectively communicate. And it speaks very much to your example. Um, this woman, she was trying to deal with her stuff, but because she didn't have that connection, she wasn't able to communicate. She wasn't able, because when you're tapping and the work you do, people are bringing up issues, right? And they're not only bringing up the problem, but they're able to have breakthroughs as far as releasing emotions, and which is, what I do in journaling, what some people do in meditation, right? All these different practices. And so like for her, she needed to be grounded, reconnected to move forward in that. And, um, ooh, I lost my thought. In order to effectively communicate, we need to process. So like if I go into that meeting and I hadn't been participating before, I've been kind of silent and in the quiet, and now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now it's time. My child has already chosen to leave this organization, and so now I can speak up because she hasn't wanted me to intervene. And so now, now I'm going to speak up. And so it just, can become quite an explosion. And that whole meeting was very jangled because everyone was trying to be respectful and kind, from students to adults, and talking around things. And yet there were so many issues and there was just so much happening that it's like people weren't really hearing other people and what they were saying. And I kind of was like observing all this and like taking it all in, like, wow, this person just said this and they totally ignored that aspect. And, you're getting lost in semantics of how we name team captains and things when you're missing the big picture is the problem. Uh, So just thinking about how in different situations when we communicate, whether we're a healthcare provider taking care of people with dementia, whether we are that family member trying to advocate for a loved one, we're a parent of a child in whatever, a new situation, going to school or having to participate in activities or therapy services or other special needs um, appointments and such, that if we've got all this emotion going on, if we don't have an outlet for dealing with it, if we don't have a source for grounding, for reconnecting, for releasing, then we're going to be far less effective at communicating.
Well, so I'm trying to think of other things you can. Well, I think it would be important for awareness too. Like for instance, when you were talking about your father in the emergency room, and is like you talk about advocacy, and I think part of that is being aware of what the stimulations are, what are causing it, so that you can at least work around it or change it, or I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, it makes perfect sense. And so there's the two parts. There's the awareness of it, and there's also the commitment to do something about it and realize how important it is. Because on some level, some people have awareness and they're like, but in this environment, we just have to do this because this is how we operate. And I'm sorry, I didn't realize I didn't introduce myself or whatever. Um, and there's also making it a priority, you know, how these outside stimuluses, it's like when another family member was in the hospital and there were behavior stuff going on, and I looked at what they were feeding them. And then you read a flyer that they're provided about anxiety and how your diet is important, and yet they're putting things into their diet or they're not giving them the proper nutrition and what they need. Um, and so there's this disconnect with how much this stuff really matters. You're in the emergency room and you're like, okay, this person, can't breathe. We got to deal with that. We got to address that. Okay, now I got to run over here because this person's bleeding and we got to, and then, oh, there's all this paperwork that's got to be filled out in order to make this next step happen, in order to get the x-ray, in order to get up to surgery. There's all this fluff and um, processes and procedures that have to be dealt with. And so trying to be efficient, and yet if we can't stop and rethink the system and be willing to be like, okay, we realize we can't make this perfect, yet there are pieces of this that are adding to our problem, that are contributing to the problem.
Mhm.
And you have to be willing to make a change. We saw that in an organization where the leaders did not appear willing to make a change. They were asking for ideas from people, but were they really ready to embrace it and to admit, okay, yeah, I agree with you, yet I don't know how that can happen, and we still get done what we need to get done. And so there's that idea of, well, there's just no other way to do this. This is just the way
Well,
it is. This is the way it has to be. We can't, yes, it would be nice, but
I think it's a matter of recognizing what you can control and what you can't control. And when it comes to the things that you can't control in the environment or external, how do you help control it for yourself or for the person that you're caring for? In other words, like for your dad is, okay, I can't change the fact that these people are in this other room making noise and doing that, whatever, but what can I do to help my father and to cope with it better or to deal with it better? So being able to, one, again, awareness, what's going on, and what aspects of that can I do something about,
Mhm.
and what aspects I can't do anything about, but I can help my father, help the person I'm caring for
Right.
to deal with. And by talking to him,
Well,
and distracting him, or what,
so yeah, there's two components there because that's what I did. I mean, I saw that that was going on. I had the awareness, and so I was able to help. I knew what to say to my dad and to help calm him. And what I wanted to do is say, hey, this is not an ideal room for him to be in. And yet I knew they were so busy that that wasn't the time. And that's where I wanted to, those are the kind of things like, why is it that there are other rooms that were private? Why was, he put in this room? How difficult is it to move people? They're on this bed. It's easy to scoot things around. I mean, and if it could make a huge, how did this happen? How did we wind up with him in this room? Is this just a policy that this is where geriatric, I'm not sure. I don't even know, or if it just happened to be that was what was open. So kind of asking those questions, but someone's got to be willing to engage in that and ask those questions even because um, many people that work there might have had that thought, but yet, oh, well, they're whatever. We've got more important things. And yet this should be important. Being able to communicate with someone and helping them feel comfortable should be important.
Yeah.
Healthcare, we're caring for someone. That's got to be important. And it really boils down to communication. And we need to be aware of how all these things impact communication. And sure, you can't change everything, but certainly coming up with ideas, having a session to talk about it, or even just bringing someone in to educate so that maybe there is that one person who does make that effort and can make a huge difference, just like the transport guy. I appreciated, I think my mom did too, that the connection that they made and that they took the time to introduce themselves. And it helped me realize, other people aren't introducing themselves, having that contrast. And so sometimes it's just a matter of being open to letting people come in because some of them, don't have much experience in geriatrics and understanding of dementia, even though they got a little bit of it in school, they don't fully grasp it the
I
way
think it,
someone who's worked with it and has a family member with it.
I mean, in a way, to speak towards the hospital or the whatever the location
Facility.
is, um, that it is somewhat they have. So, because we've dealt with on the emergency room side of it, children's side of it, and even a behavioral children's side of it. So they're trying, they're compared to years ago when you probably had one emergency room
And yet
per
years
life.
ago, people had more time to spend with patients.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just trying to look at
Well,
that
because
there is
like
some
our one
progress, and we
hospital
just
has
got
a separate children's wait, ER versus an adult ER. So it's not that they haven't done things to
so
make
we just got to
progress
keep
with this.
working with
Well,
keep.
but there's pieces that are missing. And
Yeah.
Don and I, we talk about this and this is kind of what makes our practice different and what our focus is that communication piece because I can give you all the information you need to go research facilities and make decisions about caring for aging loved ones. Yet, if you're not addressing communication with all the people involved and how you're communicating and using the skills and being an advocator and a listener, then you're going to wind up possibly miserably unhappy and grumpy and having to spend far more energy dealing with everything than if you can effectively communicate. Does that make sense?
And it kind of has to come from the patient side of it, the caregiver for the like the family, the wife, the partner, whatever the caregiver of that loved one is. It kind of has to come from them in a way because the complexity of like your father has Parkinson's and dementia and back issues. Every patient that comes in has different combination of things going on for them that it's hard for a hospital person to be able to address all of those or understand all of them.
You have to advocate for yourself,
So you
is
have
what
to
you're
advocate.
saying.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that you want communication on the hospital side too, but you also need to help them to understand what's going on for that person the loved one you're dealing with,
Yeah, the
so they can change their communication to fit that person. Because like I say, each patient they
communication
see,
needs to be improved both ways. Is that what you're saying?
well, I guess it's like it's talking about the complexity of each person is going to be so different that it's going to be hard for hospital staff to necessarily know it all. to be able to gear specific to that. I don't know.
And I guess I don't feel like in some aspects it's not a matter of knowing it all. Some of it is just common care
Well, yeah,
and
there is
concern
some of
for
that.
them as an individual. And okay, this person's older, they have some confusion. Okay, okay, are they in a room where they're going to be hearing? Is it overstimulating? Okay, we have this, protocol for minimizing overstimulation. Bam, it's really less complex and can be really more general and generic.
But I would think there would be some, like there'd be part of that is still there's some specifics
Well,
though
sure,
for
but
each
that's
person.
where I'm there, with my dad and having somebody
Yeah, well,
there. And
that's what I'm
if you
talking
don't
about.
have a person there, you have an advocate. You have someone appointed as an
Yeah,
advocate.
and
And yet there's some really simple, basic things that can be done that would cover, lots of situations.
well, yeah, no, I get that. I just I think to for a person coming in with their father or with their spouse, whatever child, even if that matter, is to make sure they can't assume that all of those things are going to, I don't know.
Yeah, you have to be an advocate.
Yeah,
You have to speak up and ask for what they
so that
need. And
advocacy communication is just as important too.
oh
Uh,
yeah, and how you communicate.
yes,
So not only how you communicate to advocate for, because if you're just angry and yelling about versus, okay, this is what they need, having it written out, having it clear and concise. So it's about the how of the communication, the
yes.
the method, the ability to effectively communicate. If that, yeah, we're talking about the same thing, just kind of slight,
Well, it's just not going in there assuming
well,
that healthcare provider is going to be able to communicate
right. And I'm not, yeah, that's
right off the bat
my
is to
intention
think,
was not that you're assuming that they if they fix their communication, everything's fine. It's like, no, the whole picture, we all need to improve our
yeah,
communication skills. We need to improve so that we can communicate for them, and they need to improve how they're communicating as well. It's yeah, there's got to be, multiple aspects of it. And so as we work with people who are helping an aging loved one or parents dealing with children with particular issues, helping them to learn better communication, because you're going to run into people who are not good at communicating. And so
a lot of
in those situations, we need to be able to step aside and know what we can do and to like, okay, that's them. That's, we need to be able to recognize that and to function despite that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
also, my patients will complain about, in the nursing home, they come in overnight from the hospital and the night staff wasn't attentive or something happened, which I mean, at night, there's very little staffing. And, oh, don't tell anyone though. I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to make this worse. It's like if there is a problem and things not working smoothly, you need to communicate that to the right people. I'm always pulling the nurse supervisor in when I see these kind of concerns. And we have a great rapport on my weekend nurse supervisor and I. And because sometimes it's just a matter of having that person to listen and knowing that there's someone they can talk to and make that connection, because you can't make change if nobody speaks up and lets know what's going on. So, helping people on that end of it, helping them to know the questions to ask, helping them to, kind of understand what they're dealing with. And um,
Well, and then and then the whole thing is too is for the person, the advocate, to be able to hold themselves in a grounded in a good place. So, like you say, they're not coming in angry or coming in yelling, because what that does, that makes it worse, because
and
then the hospital deems you as that
problem parent.
yeah,
But in having those, knowing that's going to happen, you've got an emergency situation
yeah,
coming into the hospital, people are going to be irrational, not be, even if they are excellent communicators,
yeah.
are not going to be able to come in the room and be able to handle things properly. And so realizing that, recognizing those, I mean, come on, healthcare workers, recognizing the signs that people are, oh wow, this is difficult for you. Come here and sit and let me just listen to you for a bit. Let's step aside. Being that person who's stepping up for that person. Like a lot of times in the hospital, can I get you something to drink? They'll reach out to the parents, the family members of the person that's there at the hospital. Um, and yeah, that's great. And also, how about we say, we have the space for you. Can I provide someone in here to be here with your loved one because they get scared when they're alone? Or, how can I help you to take a break? And Don and I, we were great, at this as tag teaming. And, and I got you involved. And with my mom, that's, what we often did is be like, okay, I'll step away now and I'll go get something to eat. And at times with my dad, we had to be like, okay, he's in the hands of the hospital. They are here to take care of him. We're going to go get lunch so the two of us can process and talk without him overhearing and getting paranoid. And just realizing how important that is. Because I know for me, I can get so lost and I got to be there. I got to advocate. I got to be there when the doctor's there to know, the things to say and have the lists and things. But I'm getting so overwhelmed and then I'm not doing these other things. And it's just like take that stepping away and being like, okay, um, if I forget that, then I'm going to burn out. That's, I'm going to get drained from that experience. And then I will be less effective at communicating because I'm being drained and I'm not grounding myself. I'm not taking the moments to um, gather myself up. Um, so, yeah, um, there's so much to this, and we've covered a lot of different things
Maybe,
and areas. And, you
maybe we
know,
could put this into like a, I don't know if a summary, but kind of what the message was, I guess,
sure.
what we're saying here.
It's how important it is to self-reflect on what we have going on and to step back from situations and to like learn from them and be like, okay, you know, this experience was really horrible, yet we learned from it. All we have is what's happened, and all we can do is move forward until we figure out how to time travel, right? So we have to deal with now, and we can use everything as an opportunity to kind of reassess and how important self-reflection is for all of this, for ourselves to function, and just how important communication is. And, I think of grounding, I think of honesty, I think of openness and transparency and truth. Having that ability to center yourself and be connected with what matters in order to get the results you want. Does that make sense, Don? Is that
Authentic. I don't know why the word authentic comes up for me when I talk about grounding, because it kind of brings you back to you, the real you. I don't know, that sounded weird, but that grounding is just coming back to earth, coming back to, in a
Yeah,
way.
kind of refocusing, recentering
Yeah,
so that we can do the things that we need to do. So thinking about a plant, it's got to be usually in a pot or in, so that's it can be safe and supported, yet it's got to have decent soil. It's got to have the nutrients that it needs. It's got to have the water that it needs, and it needs
space,
space and room to be able to expand and grow. If you put it in this tiny little jar and it's this big plant, so it needs all these different features. And so we have to provide it the support, the grounding, and the resources, the nutrients, the nutrition it needs to effectively expand and to grow and to be its full self. So whether this is a child, whether this is us helping our parents to be the best they can despite difficult situations with illnesses and dementia and other things, we got to look at the whole picture.
so Gina, what's that you hold in your hand?
So I have some song lyrics, and um,
Um,
and I want to just share some of these lyrics. This is from the song, the band Cameo. And the song is called Roses. It's kind of become my little anthem. And if you follow me on Gina's life journey, I wrote a little blog about it. I'm just going to read the lyrics because metaphors and meanings and symbolisms, they have power for me and just the symbolism in it. And so that maybe this serves you, maybe it doesn't. But a lot's been changing lately, and I can't tell if it's me or if it's everybody else. But I'm done wasting my time on the woe is me bullcrap that's keeping me from being myself. So look around and tell me what you want me to see. Maybe you're the person that you always wanted to be, Why you want to be a sad boy, waste your time looking for something that was right here all along. I think we're getting it wrong. It's too bad. When did it get cool to be so sad? We're spinning backwards. Did we all go mad? Yeah, we're only human, but we've got hands and hearts and noses. So stop and smell the roses.
So that's our podcast for today. We really hope you enjoyed it. And if you know somebody that this could really help, we ask you to pass it along. Let them know because we're out here trying to help those caregivers and those people that are caring for a loved one. If you like what you heard today, check out our coaching program, our workshops. Uh, we also have our uh, Tuesday tips, which every Tuesday we have the podcast, a little podcast that gives a good tip for parenting.
And an email that comes out that you can receive it in printed form. And, everything related to parenting our children, our parents, and ourselves, and the new community we are growing with Ask the OT and that supportive environment to get more resources, information, and have a support group.
Yeah, check us out at focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can check us on Facebook, Instagram.
And remember, how we speak to our children, our parents, people in our care, all those around us, shapes their future, and it shapes our present and our future as well.